Canada stands at a crossroads, one that stretches far beyond fighter jets and procurement politics. At the heart of the debate lies a deeper question. What kind of military capability should Canada rely on for the next half-century? And how does that choice shape the nation's sovereignty, economy, and role on the global stage? The decision to move forward with the Lockheed Martin F-35A Lightning II, after more than a decade of hesitation, has triggered renewed discussion about whether this stealth aircraft truly serves Canada's long-term strategic interests, or whether alternatives like Saab's Gripen E would have offered a more balanced, cost-effective, and sovereign-friendly solution. For Canada, replacing its aging CF-18 Hornet fleet has never been simply about picking the most advanced fighter. Instead, it is a complex balancing act between capability, cost, industrial benefits, Arctic realities, and political commitments. The F-35 might promise high-end stealth and unmatched sensor fusion, but the decision comes with trade-offs, especially regarding maintenance costs, technology access, and long-term dependency on U.S. support. Meanwhile, Saab's Gripen E, though less stealthy, offered a model built on operational flexibility, ease of maintenance, and the highest level of technology transfer ever proposed to Canada. This made many analysts wonder, did Canada choose capability at the expense of sovereignty? The F-35's strength is undeniable. It is arguably the most sophisticated multi-role fighter ever fielded, designed for contested airspace, electronic warfare dominance, and integrated network-centric operations. For NATO interoperability, it is a natural fit, especially as more allies adopt the platform. Canada, as a founding F-35 partner, has spent billions on development and has secured industrial contracts for Canadian aerospace firms. From this perspective, selecting the F-35 seems like a logical continuation of earlier investments. Moreover, with the United States as Canada's closest defense partner, harmonizing equipment offers operational advantages. For NORAD missions, joint training, and integrated air defense, the F-35 simplifies coordination and strengthens the bilateral security framework. However, this capability comes with one of the highest procurement and life cycle costs of any fighter aircraft in history. While the upfront flyaway price has stabilized, the long-term sustainment cost remains significantly higher than conventional fighters. Canada will rely on U.S. supply chains, U.S. software updates, and U.S. data infrastructure to keep the aircraft flying. This creates an unavoidable dependency. For a country that values independent Arctic sovereignty and must patrol the world's second-largest national territory, relying on external approval for software access or component upgrades raises legitimate strategic concerns. Critics argue that Canada is buying more jet than it needs, at a price it cannot control.
This is where Saab's Gripen E entered the conversation as a compelling alternative. Designed for nations seeking flexibility, affordability, and sovereign control, the Gripen E offered Canada a different blueprint, a fighter that could be maintained in remote locations, operated with small crews, and repaired rapidly, even on icy airstrips far from major bases. For a nation responsible for vast, rugged, and sparsely populated northern regions, such attributes align well with Canada's unique operational demands. Saab's proposal went even further, increased industrial participation, including domestic assembly, full software access, and deep technology transfer. For Canadian aerospace firms, this could have meant decades of high-skilled jobs and genuine national expertise in fighter design and maintenance, a level of involvement that the F-35 program does not fully replicate. Gripen supporters highlight that the aircraft's advanced electronic warfare suite, long-range Meteor missile capability, and low operating cost provide real-world advantages. While it is not a stealth fighter in the same class as the F-35, its modern sensors and integrated systems are sufficient for most of Canada's missions: sovereignty patrols, NORAD interceptions, and NATO deployments. Additionally, the Gripen's ability to operate independently, without U.S. approval or external code management, appeals to those who believe Canada should maintain maximum autonomy in defense decision-making. Yet, even with these advantages, the political momentum strongly favored the F-35. NATO alignment, pressure from defense partners, and the global shift toward fifth-generation air power created an environment where choosing anything else appeared increasingly difficult. Canada's political leadership may have feared that rejecting the F-35 would signal strategic divergence at a time when North America faces new challenges, from Russian Arctic activity to rapidly evolving air threats. Moreover, the economic benefits of remaining in the F-35 program, while not as transformative as Saab's offer, are substantial and spread across hundreds of Canadian companies already embedded in the supply chain. In the end, Canada's fighter choice reflects a broader philosophical choice. Should the country prioritize being part of the most advanced coalition fighter ecosystem in the world, accepting the costs and dependencies that come with it, or should it seek domestic industrial autonomy, operational independence, and a custom solution better tailored to its geography and long-term interests? These questions will not disappear simply because the procurement contract has been signed. As the jets arrive and Canada integrates them into its fleet, debates over affordability, maintenance, sovereignty, and Arctic suitability will only intensify. What is clear is that Canada's fighter choice reveals more about national priorities than about aircraft specifications. The F-35 embodies a commitment to close U.S. defense integration and high-end multi-role capability. The Gripen alternative represented a path toward industrial empowerment and operational independence. Canada chose the former, but the conversation about sovereignty, jobs, and long-term strategy is far from over.